You know, whatever race it is.
Hey.
Last 2 times. Good evening, members of council, ladies and gentlemen. I see that we have quorum, and I call this regular meeting for the Town of Pelham Council for Monday, November 19th to order. You'll notice that Christmas and the holidays have taken over the council chamber. These are pictures that were drawn throughout by youth throughout the community, and the CAO and my executive assistant has a real flair for Christmas and loves Christmas, so she put it up early. We will be seeing youth from the community come forward. A dozen of these have been selected to be on the cover and inside of the holiday Christmas card for this year. So the council will have that presentation at our next council meeting on December 3rd. So in the meantime, it's Christmas all over the council chamber, and hopefully everyone will be in the spirit. We will begin with an invocation. No, I'm sorry. Yes, we'll begin with an invocation which will be led by Councillor Kersey, followed by the singing of the national anthem, led by Councillor Papp. All rise.
Shall we pray? Lord, to whom much is given, much is expected. Grant that as this council meets to take up the business of the people, they demonstrate wisdom in all their deliberations. May the decisions that are made in this place of government be guided by strength and courage. Be with each council member as they consider each policy, bylaw, and procedure placed before them. Amen.
Amen. O Canada, our home and native land, true patron all, in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, councillors. The first item is the approval of the agenda. It has been moved by Councillor Ribbiak, seconded by Councillor Papp, that the agenda for the November 19th, 2012 regular meeting of council be adopted. Are there any additions to that agenda? Councillor Durley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At 15.1, reports from members of council, I would like to make an announcement of community interest, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you. I look forward to that. Is there a seconder for that, Councillor Ribbiak? All those in favor of that amendment? Any opposed? None. Motion carried. Councillor Papp?
Two quick reports under the same area, 15.1. One is I want to report on the Diamond Jubilee Award, November 15th, 2012 at the Canadian Legion in Welland. And secondly, a very quick 90-second report on the Welland-Pelham Chamber of Commerce.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Kersey? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
And now to the, any others? And now to the motion as amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. The next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Do any members have any pecuniary interest they need to declare regarding this meeting? Can that be noted in the minutes, please? We have a presentation and a number of delegations. So the first presentation is by Mr. Jonathan Hack, Sierra Planning and Management. Thank you for joining us this evening. If you could make your way to the podium.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of Council. We have a shortish presentation. We'll do our best to get through it quickly. And the purpose
Could you
of,
just pull your microphone down so maybe folks in the back can hear you? Just
it's hiding behind the front.
angle it down,
Christmas
yeah.
tree.
Perfect, thank you.
Can everyone hear me at the back? Okay. Okay. If you can't, just let me know. We have a presentation. You have it on your screens, and members of the public can see it on the wall. My name again is Jonathan Heck, and I'm with Sierra Planning and Management. We're a planning and management consulting firm from Toronto. We've done several master plans related to recreation, to culture development in municipalities, as well as economic development and things of this nature. And we were retained to develop a cultural master plan for the municipality. And the purpose of this evening's presentation is to give council and members of the public just a brief update as to where we are in the process and where we'll be going from now to conclude the exercise. So it's firstly important just to sort of state what we are looking at for everyone's benefit. And so we're really looking at it from the sort of accepted definition. It's not everyone's definition, but it's ours. Cultural planning is a process for identifying and leveraging a community's cultural resources, strengthening the management of the resources, and integrating the resources across all facets of local planning and decision making. That comes from the Ontario Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport. And I would emphasize tourism and culture. We see this exercise as two sides of the same coin. Culture on the one side, tourism on the other. So the key words there for us are identifying and leveraging resources. That's part of the economic development mandate of a town. Strengthening the management, so getting the resources in place to roll this forward for the next 10 years. And integration, making sure that we've listened to everyone and that the plan that we put forward in terms of how the municipality will respond to the opportunities for culture and tourism development and meeting the needs of this community is as strong as it can be. So that's the basis on which we're undertaking this plan. So the core elements are to broadly define it. Now, having said that, we keep a very open mind as in part of this process as to what it does actually entail. So we've had a broad definition. The whole exercise is geared to providing a cultural lens to decision making. This is a municipal planning document at the end of the day. It's not an advocacy document for any individual group within the arts sector or the cultural sector at large, but it should meet the needs of those organizations generally in terms of moving the opportunities for cultural expression, development, engagement of youth and adults in each of the communities that makes up the town of Pelham. That should be the goal of it. It does it through the municipal process, by which we mean this is a plan for how the town of Pelham as a corporation and as a council can promote and make maximum benefit from culture. So cross-sectoral strategies are another. Partnerships and shared governance strategies to support the cultural sector. Without partnership, and I mean that across the whole range, between organizations, between individuals, between departments, between levels of government, the plan will go nowhere fast. So partnership, you'll see in the final plan, is going to be a watchword, and it will have some specific requirements attached to it. The last part here, cultural mapping. We've been working on trying to identify the assets locally. A few years ago, Pelham was part of a broader regional cultural mapping exercise where they looked at all the assets, however defined, and identified where they were on a map and provide some information about them. We've been doing it from the ground up, so it's a document that is based on cultural assets in Pelham, and I'll come on to what those are a little bit later on. So it's a cultural, it's a municipal planning document, I should say. And as I say, we've already covered this. It feeds into the processes for tourism, recreation, and economic development. The aim, therefore, it will have stood the test if it enables better clarity for planning for cultural facilities. And facilities is a theme that you'll see through our consultation that we've been having, that it promotes cultural tourism, almost by definition. Again, almost by definition, strong culture, strong facilities, strong business opportunities result in retention and attraction. So we certainly see this as part of a broader process of planning for each of the villages. So downtown regeneration, neighborhood revitalization, quality of life overall is the goal. So those are fairly broad, ambitious plans, and the aim of the plan is to provide some specifics to work towards that. Now, I won't go into a great deal of detail here. Members of council have this on their iPads, and members of the public can read it at their leisure. But it's important to have a working definition of culture. So rather than a sort of high-level aspirational definition, which at the end of the day reflects the vision that people put forward, we need to actually understand what is it, who are we looking for? What sectors are we looking for? Are we looking for artists? Are we looking for people who are writers? Are we looking for people that that promote the arts, promote entertainment? Are we talking about heritage preservation? So we've got a fairly detailed listing there, and I'll just go straight to the bottom of it. It is not necessarily limited to communications, media, electronic arts, performing arts, literary arts, heritage, that's both the built heritage and the natural heritage, crafts, design, arts, and visual arts. You also see that we've talked about some things which are a bit more less tangible. You can't put these things on a map. Sense of identity, sense of place. Culture can manifest itself through a variety of forms: professional, recreational. How we actually go about engaging in recreation and sport is fundamental to cultural development. That's why this plan is about engagement as well, and we've had a number of working sessions, and we'll continue to have more as we move towards creating a document that should have, if we've done our job correctly, it's got not only the support of council, but it would have the nod of approval from members of the community as well. So the phases, we've really gone through phases 1 and 2 thus far. So that's understanding the current cultural climate and mapping. So that's going, as I said, our mapping is from the ground up, rather than to sort of go through the yellow pages and pick what we think are cultural businesses. That's just but one category of it. We've gone through and looked at events and festivals, organizations, non-for-profits, heritage, where the buildings are, where the facilities are, and created a number of different layers. These things are, by definition, static in the sense that the moment you capture it, the next day, something could happen where they change. So part of what we're trying to do is create something that's relatively simple and manageable, meaning that when we've left the scene and the map or the asset database becomes property of the corporation to then do with as you need to in terms of promotion and tourism, it's able to be updated, and it is a solid understanding of who the members of the community are in terms of culture. Community engagement and visioning we've done, and then cultural plan development we still have to do. So that's our job in the new year, is to come back with a plan which is built on the 2 earlier tasks. Thus far, we've completed an interim report, which is a fairly weighty document and is really a series of sort of where we are at the moment in terms of the intelligence gathered, where all of this fits in terms of planning policy, regional policy, the asset database, and the consultation that we've had. The public consultation is important, allows us to move into phase 3 in the development of the plan. So in terms of the sector, it's probably worth, I just wanted to give council just a brief update as to what we have been mapping. And I appreciate that this looks, like various dots on a map. And the map should be the expression of the database. I'm less concerned about the look and feel of the map at the moment. It will eventually need to be a web-based document, so you place your cursor over it, you get a sense of exactly who is in that red dot versus that purple dot, and you'd have a drop-down description. So that if you're as I've my constant example is, if you're a European tourist and you want to come to this part of the world, you want to go to a website that is, it might be Niagara culture, it could be Pelham culture, however you navigate to it, you're able to find that information, create some itinerary. Now that's the big picture in the sense of part of the tourism focus, but also if you are in the sector, if you are a member of the community, if you are a young boy or girl that wants to get into identify a club or an organization to promote your own skills development, you want to be able to use this as well. So ultimately this is a very important tool. For the moment, the database is more important than the maps. And what we're looking at in terms of, just give you an idea of the cultural resources, categories we've used are built heritage, community cultural organizations, creative cultural industries, festivals and events, spaces and facilities, and natural heritage. That's and below that are a series of other subsets, but that's really a technicality. What we want to do is create this so that it is as strong as possible, and also have the hope that other municipalities around, elsewhere in Niagara region, are doing the same exercise, which will only benefit what Pelham is doing in terms of providing a great landscape of culture in the region. So who are the cultural industries then? A couple of points and then a caveat that I want to just make. This is based on information that comes from Statistics Canada as of 2012, so it's very current, and they basically itemize all of the businesses. They class them as establishments, and they break them down by very detailed industrial categories. We've rolled them up into these categories that you see before you. And so what this has done, and just a word on the one on the bottom on communications media. As it was pointed out to us, we've taken this from our Excel spreadsheets essentially, and we've looked at it, and then you need to sort of do some ground truthing. Obviously, local newspapers or websites that are geared to communications media, they, in this particular example, they could be populated in that category where it says 0, but they may also be in electronic arts or elsewhere in the database. So there's a little bit of flexibility that you need to take on board when you review some of this information. But in general terms, our experience is that it's useful to use. So you can see there that design and civic arts, these are in terms of establishments. So they can be non-profits, but they can also be for-profit organizations. You can see the distribution there is fairly healthy in terms of the distribution of the business. Festivals and events, I wouldn't be too concerned with that. These are, you have more events, you have an infrastructure around that, and obviously the town is central to that. So that won't get necessarily captured as a business. So the fact that there's 3% of industries or businesses or establishments, I should say, are in the business of festivals and events, that shouldn't be something to concern you. But it gives you a sense of the breakdown. Community stakeholder input. Well, we did a number of things. We were here in the summer for the mid-year festivals, and we had 3 additional focus groups with invited stakeholders. We had one public meeting at the Old Town Hall, which was a success. We got a lot of information out of it. And then we had an online survey, which we have currently ongoing, and this is an opportunity to re-advertise it. If anyone wants to provide some commentary, they can find the link on the town's website. So you can see the number of participants there. Total participants to date around 237. We're happy with that. That's good level of feedback. And you can see there where we've been having the actual meetings through the course. This is where it gets a little bit detailed, but it's worth to have it so that you can study the details. We asked a number of questions, such as how would you describe the state of culture in Pelham as a whole? What are your priorities and next steps? What do you see the role of the municipality? And what role should Pelham play in developing and promoting culture in the region as a whole? So some fairly important questions to be asked. And we've further broken this down into a kind of a category, and then some further information. So one response was in terms of what's the state of culture in terms of community and cultural identity. It's in need of promotion and development. These are just things that people, we haven't weighted these are just some examples of what people have said. In terms of what's unique in Pelham, small town ambience, that's one thing that came struck out. The importance of the individual villages is important. And obviously, coming to this from outside of the community, that's something that we wouldn't have been aware of. We've been aware of it. We now need to make sure our planning reflects the needs. Cultural development and programming and training. Pelham needs cultural facilities, but more than this, the town needs greater cultural programming. Again, that's one or two people's perspectives on it. People have to go out of town. So the role of facilities leading to the role of programming is important. And in terms of what role should Pelham play, Pelham has a role to play in supporting culture in the region, which may benefit its own efforts to develop local culture. That, I think, is critical. The success of the region means the success of the town in terms of cultural development. So we have to look beyond our borders in terms of promoting the entire sector. Public meeting results. Again, we've categorized it in similar ways, but strengths and uniqueness of the cultural environment. The volunteer sector is important. It is in many places, and that needs to be maintained. It can be a fragile thing, and so that's important. Definitely part of the municipal plan is to promote that engagement through the generations. A range of events are important, as I outlined there. In terms of the desires and expectations, development of facilities and infrastructure to support cultural tourism. Program and capacity development. So again, facilities, programming. These are the sort of the core elements of municipal involvement. Now, they don't necessarily mean that you have to be the ones doing all of the programming. You know, a community development model where you continue to facilitate the actions of others is probably, you know, the more appropriate role to go. That's for us to come back to you in March and give you some ideas about how we see that going. Actions, next steps, and moving ahead. Municipalities should consider how it might offer more financial and physical supports for cultural events. So there's a lot on these pages, and I'd be very happy to get into any details. But the point, I think, is that we asked some tough questions. We got some good feedback. We got some personal agendas, as you always would expect, and we got some views about the importance of developing culture across the sectors. Public events and outreach results. What you value most about culture, again, identity, small town roots. What's the most important cultural assets? A whole range have been identified there, a lot of them based on sort of the natural environment. And existing facilities and heritage. Better marketing, though, in terms of what challenges lie ahead. You know, there's some fairly strong comments. There are no youth programs for those 15 to 16 years old, though libraries are good. There is no space for artists. You know, treat these as comments which are opportunities for us to work out how we can provide for the needs of various groups and articulate back. And one thing we are going to be doing as part of the plan is demonstrating what currently is spent on culture in the municipality, in terms of what the corporation spends, but also other institutions as well. Survey results. Again, I won't go through. I think we're running out of time, but we asked a lot of questions, and in terms of just go through the top answers. What are the most significant issues facing? Lack of funding. Existing facilities for the arts are limited, and a need for advocacy and management. What are the most significant opportunities for future arts? Again, a range of facilities, expansion of cultural tourism, heritage preservation and celebration. What are the three most significant actions? Explore potential partnerships, that word again, partnerships, maximize existing facilities for cultural activity. None of those things are, I think, surprising. We see them in a number of places. Again, the importance here is to focus on solutions which are fiscally responsible for the next sort of 5 to 10 years, and which recognize that choices have to be made in terms of facilities. An emerging community vision. We are not yet at the point where we will be able to rattle off a paragraph which is a defined vision for people, but the key words we wanted to put on the page, and they're in our interim report, and we'd ask you to look at them. Improvement and expansion of activities, facilities and events in a manner which facilitates intergenerational and inter-community participation, taking maximum advantage of local and regional partnerships for cultural tourism and heritage celebration. Town consideration of space needs, strategies to build or multi-purpose existing cultural spaces is clearly a priority. The development of culture and cultural activities in Pelham should celebrate its heritage, identity, unique location in the region, its assets, both locally and regionally. Again, this is just, these are the things that we're going to be looking at in terms of the final plan. Organisation of funding, I think, is important. Facilities and urban infrastructure, what needs to be done. Communication and advocacy, cultural development, programming and training, and planning and policy. And really the aim here is to make the cultural plan fit into the landscape of existing portfolios of work that the municipality has to do. I won't go through any of this in great detail, just to finish off, though, to indicate that, under organisation of funding, we will be coming back with identifying a clear role for the municipality in terms of a vision statement, looking at issues of funding, and exploring potential partnerships. That will be one of the most important aspects. In terms of facilities and urban infrastructure, we will need to develop some strategies in terms of statements of what people need in terms of the facilities that they require and how that may dovetail with existing plans, short-term and long-term, in the community. And finally, planning and policy. I think at the end of this planning process, a working, clear definition, an understanding of the assets, and its role in developing sort of tourism advocacy in the town will be important. Your worship, members of council, I will leave it at that. That's a lot to digest, but that's where we are in the process. So we're well on our way to complete.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Very comprehensive report on what you provided to us, and as you said, the document's very thick. I wonder if members of council have any questions for our presenter at this time? Mr. Hyde? No? I did have a question. It's just one of clarity, and certainly I appreciate your work. And I should mention on behalf of council that we certainly appreciate members of the public getting involved in this. I see some of them in the audience this evening that have been involved through this process, and it's really, you can't do your work unless you have feedback and involvement of the community. So
That's right.
On behalf of council, I want to say thank you to those that have been involved. On one of your slides, the one about the as of November 15th, this is the survey slide there?
Yeah, let me just scroll back to that.
Yeah, if you don't mind. It's not, there it is.
Yes.
I missed what you said here. There's two with dots. Lacking information and then the one right in the middle, and acceptable but needs greater ...
I'm just going through the questions there. So the questions are, what are the most significant issues facing the future of arts and culture? And the second question was the three most significant opportunities.
Yeah, I'm looking at the answers off to the left. 23% said lacking information and ... and 33% said acceptable but needs greater ... Do you know what's behind the ...
I'll get you an answer. That's a PowerPoint issue. There is some additional wording that's hidden by the ... So I will make a note and issue that back to you.
No doubt when the survey is done, so folks can still fill out the survey. When's it open till et cetera?
Yeah, we continue to keep it open because we recognise that people are busy and we need to keep advertising, and we really should keep it open until the end of the project, and we have no problem in doing that. Technology allows us to go back and just quickly assemble the latest results. We've also dropped off hard copies, which will be distributed to the library, because we did hear from some of the members of the public that they would prefer to do hard copy responses just using pen and paper, which is great, and so that will be it will go to the library, I think, and it can go to any other locations that are necessary as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. So folks can get to that survey straight from the town's website. Is that correct? There it
Yes.
is. Access the survey now. I see it there. So it's 2 clicks away.
Yeah.
And that website, I know Councillor Ribbiak would want me to say that. That's www.pelham.ca. Thank you very much. Appreciate your presentation. No other questions from members of council. So we look forward to the process, and we encourage members of the public to continue to be involved in the survey, and look forward to seeing your final report.
If I could just say, part of our process is what we call continuous engagement. So if there is anybody that wants to have a conversation with us and they missed the formal times when we were in town to do that, they can certainly find our details and get in contact with us and give us their opinions.
Okay, thank you. I think there's the Director of Culture, Recreation, and Wellness on that as a contact on that website. So, thank you very much. It has been moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak, that the information presented in the delegation by Jonathan Hack, Sierra Planning and Management, regarding the interim report on the cultural master plan be received for information. Any comments or questions on that? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. That motion is carried. Thank you very much again for that presentation and for your ongoing work. Now we move into delegations, and we have 3 delegations this evening. The first is from the Welland Historical Museum, and Ms. Nora Reed is here, and I'm going to ask her to perhaps introduce those that are making the presentation, and also though you have quite a contingent here with you this evening. So please come on up to the
Good evening, councillors and Mayor Augustine. I'm here with Carol Cernese. She's a member of our Board of Management. Also here from our Board of Management is our Vice President, Mary Lou Ambrose Little, another Director, Rick Stanley, and another Director, Betty Ann DeMartle, who's our Pelham representative.
Thank you.
So I'm going to turn it over to Carol as soon as I get the PowerPoint started here.
Okay, good evening, Mayor Augustine, council members, staff. Just as an aside, it was very interesting to follow the last presentation, as it kind of fits in with what Welland Museum is all about. So I would like to refer back to their presentation a little bit as I go through. Just as an introduction, I'm Carol Cernese. I'm a member of the Board of Management of the Welland Historical Museum, and I'm pleased to be here with Nora, our Executive Director. And on behalf of the Board of Management and the museum staff, we're really here to bring you up to date on all the services that we provide to the Welland Pelham community. Now, I've been a museum volunteer since 2009 and a board member since 2011. I was born in Welland and moved to New York City, where I lived for 40 years. When I retired, I wanted to come home, and so I did. And I retired in 2008. I was a trusts and estates attorney for the Internal Revenue Service in Manhattan at that time. I'm really glad to be back in this community. I'm enjoying being in support of our community by serving on the museum board, as well as the boards of the Rose City Senior Center, or Foundation now, the Confederation of University Women, and Casa Dante Lodge, where I'm a board of trustee and roll meatballs on pasta night.
Wonderful culture.
Very much so. Yeah, it's a real cross feeling for the community. I'm particularly proud to be part of our strong and dedicated museum board, which includes, as Nora introduced, our representative Betty Ann DeMartle, who I'm sure you know, And in learning about all the different ways that the museum serves our communities, I've observed, as have many others, that the existence of the community, or rather the museum, is as necessary to the well-being of our community as any other institution, whether it be the local library or another. The museum is an integral part of Welland and Pelham's tapestry and provides critical services to our citizens which are not available anywhere else. And, before I go on with my prepared remarks, I couldn't help but notice in the last presentation that one of the themes is really, well, obviously it's about culture, but it's about heritage. And I think that fits in very clearly with Welland's museum and our purposes, to celebrate the heritage of Pelham and Welland, which we do, and it provides a sense of identity for Pelham and Welland, and it's a tourism itinerary goal also. So well, try and weave kind of all of these ideas in and out, because as we were listening, it seemed to fit very nicely. So, where are we? Okay, we're at the staff. All right, in this disposable age, our museum is a repository of history. It's a keeper of memories. We preserve, display, and make available for important research artifacts which would otherwise be lost. For example, we are protecting 1,000 historical objects and 20,000 historical land deeds from the town of Pelham. The Welland Pelham Museum is increasingly recognized by residents and tourists from around the world as a must-see destination. Our exhibits and events are regularly covered by local newspapers and media outlets. So again, as tourists come into the Pelham area, as they come into the Welland area, we don't see any reason why we cannot direct one, from one place to the other, because it's only 5 minutes away, and we're really, just touching all of our streets. So the museum is increasingly recognized. Sorry, we did that. In the last year, we welcomed 4,233 visitors from Niagara. They came from Europe, the U.S., England, and Hong Kong. And this compares very favorably, by the way, with the visitor numbers at the Niagara-on-the-Lake Museum, which has 4,377. So we're right, in the sight of the tourist industry. Now, another contribution to our communities is that the museum provides important work opportunities for students. Each summer, we hire university and college students who get hands-on museum experience by assisting our very busy staff. And these positions are funded by the museum and the federal government. Now, also, in 2011, we were approached by Mary Lamb of the Pelham Historical Society to partner with them in hiring a summer student for a special project. Sean Lewis of Pelham was selected among the applicants, and he worked at the museum for 7 weeks under our guidance. And his task was to upload data from the museum's Pelham land deeds to a genealogical website so that people from this area would be able to access their history. So all of that, the land deeds, of course, are at the museum, but now it's on the website. Now, our exhibit openings do bring in hundreds of attendees, and it's understandable why people want to visit the museum, because our very talented curator, Penny Morningstar, she designs and mounts extremely creative and interesting exhibits. You will find, let's see, do we have? Well, you will find Pelham artifacts and history included in many of our current exhibits, such as the war exhibit and our 1812 exhibit. Now, the visitor is touched by the unique truth and reality. You almost expect to hear the voice of a soldier writing to his loved one here in the war exhibit, or see yourself at the once magnificent Capitol Theater. We also, some of our recent exhibits include the Métis, the Infinite History of the Métis in Niagara. Now, this was mounted in partnership. Again, as the previous presenter was talking about partnerships, this is something that we also try and reach out into the community, whether it's the Métis or Pelham Council or Weavers. So the Métis was mounted in partnership with the Niagara Region Métis Council, and it's the only exhibit of its kind in Ontario celebrating the ancestry of the Métis. It's particularly timely as the Métis are currently addressing the evolving recognition of their collective identity and rights in Canada. I was coincidentally caught some of their presentations to the Senate on recent public television. Now, we have a traveling exhibit called The Passages to Freedom. Now, this is a very powerful exhibit. It's about the secrets of the Underground Railroad, and it's bilingual traveling exhibit which we rent to museums across Canada from coast to coast, and it goes with, you know, the Welland Pelham, and this year we're in the U.S. It's always on the road, and it's been exhibited in 41 venues over the last 10 years. Recently, we opened the War of 1812, Battle of Cook's Mills, Lives Remembered. This was very interesting, and it focuses on an important but little-known battle of the war, the last major engagement of the war on Canadian soil. The slide shows some of the themes of the exhibit. Included is a significant artifact. You'll see looks in the glass case standing, yes, there. This is the wedding dress worn by Hetty Brown when she married Asa Hansler of Pelham. And there it is. And it's black, right? It's a wedding
It's brown, it's dark brown, yeah, because they had to wear them afterward. I mean, they didn't dress all up in white unless you were very rich, I guess.
Now, our famous sons and daughters, which you may have heard about last year, we had a big fundraiser. We now are installing a wall of fame, rather, and it's a digital presentation down memory lane that reminds us of the men and women from Welland and Pelham who have been high achievers in diverse fields, both nationally or internationally. We included Pelham stars such as cyclist Steve Bauer, musician Mark Lalama, golfer Marlene Stewart-Street, and aviatrix and Renaissance woman Dorothy Rungelin, among some of the people who we honored. We also have a Just for Kids children's gallery, recently redone, repainted, and it's a play area for youngsters to dress up in costumes and examine a full-size authentic crocodile skin, which I always avoid on my way in, and say hello to Allie, our resident turtle. But I have to say, the other day I was working in the office, and all of a sudden I could hear arg, 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 and it was all the children coming up from a birthday party to the gallery so they could put on their pirates' outfits and everything. So it's a very lively place.
Ms. Sarnese,
Am I running out of time?
well, it's not fair. Mr. Hack got a lot of time, but that's because he's a contractor for us. So
Okay.
you are just about 11 minutes, and we have a 10-minute. So I'd
Oh,
just
yes,
ask
of
if you
course. I
if you
thought
just
I-
kind of speed it up a little, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. We offer outreach programs, which are run by Penny Morningstar, curator, and she's available to talk on many subjects, by the way. She can come into Pelham, and we invite all groups to call for us. We have one on 1812, we have one on the passport, which is a collaborative project with Niagara School Board. Now, we have a full-time educational programmer, Tracy Vandervliet, and she delivers highly popular and unique Ontario curriculum-based education programs for grades K through 12. Now, she will tailor especially for the school, including Pelham. She has delivered educational packages to all of the Pelham schools, and she's already met with several of the principals. And Betty Ann DeMartle and Larry Lemlin are involved in that program. The Métis has their own gallery, and they have, again, an educational-based program. We have a partnership with the Weavers Guild, and our recreation programming is geared to people of all ages. We've had speakers, Anna and Michael Olson, railroad historian Dr. Andrew Pankow, and Royal Canadian Geographical Society explorer Adam Schultz. Our recreation program provides recreation activities for children and adults throughout the year. We had a family fun day. I am running ahead, but it attracted over 400 people. And this year it was free because we raised enough funds at the famous Sons and Daughters. We have an archivist full-time, and this is for, and these collections cannot be found, some of the work cannot be found anywhere else. We meet all of our...
Registry office deeds from Pelham.
Oh, yes, okay. Yes, we have Pelham's Registry Office Deeds, 1867 to 1957 for Welland, Crowland, and Pelham. We are overseen by the Ontario Ministry of Tourism. We did enter into a strategic plan, and that mission, well, the mission before the strategic plan as well, was to preserve the material history of Welland and Pelham. It is definitely in our mandate. We include Pelham, and we've been doing that for 35 years. We have a gift shop, welcome you to come for Christmas gifts. We have a community room used by the school boards and many other groups. I will wrap up here, and I just want to say that one way that we can connect the two is that we have pamphlets and maps of the area available in our entry for tourists. So if you wanted to send or have your shops and restaurants send us any type of advertising, we'd be happy to include that. And we're happy to work with you in any kind of a partnership that you can think would be helpful to the town of Pelham. I think that's it. I mean, I had some more words, but we don't need them all.
Thank you for your presentation, and I apologize for asking you to rush through that.
That's quite all right. I'm sorry it took
Last
so long.
portion. Very comprehensive presentation, and I wonder if there's any questions that members of council have for our representatives at this time. Councillor Papp?
Just quickly, thank you for your presentation. Have you, I was asking our CEO, have you made any requests for funding from us, grants?
Yes, we've requested
Okay.
a small grant this year
All right.
to help support the maintenance of the Pelham collection. It would be conservation and storage.
So we'll deal with that at budget time. Thank you, that's all thank
Okay.
you, very well done.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate being able
Thank
to
you
talk
so
with
much.
you.
Any other questions by members of council? No? Okay, thank you very much for your presentation, and we appreciate you keeping us informed of all the activities of the museum. So it has been moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak, that the information presented by representatives of the Welland Historical Museum be received for information. Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. That motion is carried. Thank you again, and thank you to all the members of the board for being here as well. Next on the agenda is a delegation by Nicholas Tarzis. I don't know that Mr. Tarzis is here. Is Mr. Tarzis here? Madam Clerk, do you want to comment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll be pleased to contact Mr. Tarsis and reschedule the delegation.
Okay, thank you. Members of council, Mr. Tarzis did present to us an item of information, and I wonder if it'd be appropriate to receive that. So let's change this. So, right, thank you. So has been, Councillor Durley and Councillor Papp are amenable that the motion would be that the information submitted by Nicholas Tarzis regarding compliance with property standards bylaw be received for information. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Councillor?
Just one question on that. Notwithstanding, when he does make his presentation, certainly he will represent this, and there would be not a problem with that.
Madam Clerk, I think that's the understanding, is it not?
Okay.
Okay,
Fine.
thank you, Counselor. We'll look forward to that. Anything further on that information as presented at this point? And if he does present, we may have questions. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Our next delegation is Jane Stogren. Ms. Stogren, site alteration issue and comments. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, Madam Clerk, and CAO Ottaway for allowing me to read my letter that was excluded from the Planning and Development Summary Report. This report regarding the site alteration bylaw was presented at the Committee of the Whole meeting on November 5th, 2012. My letter was faxed on September 30th, 2012, addressed to Mayor Augustine, Town of Pelham councillors, and CAO Mr. D. Ottaway, and included in the files. Somehow my letter was not included in the November 5th report, along with other public comments. I will now read for you my letter of September 30th, 2012. Proposed site alteration bylaw. To date, we have not received any response from any councillor to our letter dated February 29th, 2012, addressed individually to each council member. We have not been able to figure out where the proliferation of berms are within the town of Pelham that would warrant such a bylaw like this. The mountains on 16 Road at Cream Street that have been continually under construction, allegedly for several years, were allowed to be built unabated by the town of Pelham, without any discussion, work stoppage, or the need for a site alteration bylaw. There are very few such examples of mounds like this within the town of Pelham, and without the councillor's reply to our February request, there may be no need for control of something that is non-existent or does not pose any valid concern. Why has there not been another public open meeting as promised last year for residents to comment on the newly drafted site alteration bylaw? We feel that this bylaw is not reflective of the needs of the residents of the town, as most are not even aware that such a bylaw is under consideration. This bylaw would only serve to add public confusion and extremely unnecessary, exorbitant expenses to residents wishing to perform work on their property. We feel that this bylaw is being pushed through in order to satisfy a political promise made by Mr. Rybiak during his campaign last year for Ward 1 by-election. Development of an appropriate site alteration bylaw was added to Mr. Rybiak's advertisement in the June 15th, 2011 edition of the Voice of Pelham newspaper. This election promise followed closely behind the June 6, 2011 presentation to Town Council members by our neighbour, a presentation which contained allegations about our farm that were proven false by the town's own investigations. The same neighbour made additional false allegations about our farm at a public meeting on September 26, 2011, and again in print to Pelham Town Council on February 6, 2012. This is a neighbour dispute, which the town has involved itself in and taken up this neighbour's cause to bully, target, and harass us, and use our construction project as a reason to implement this needless bylaw. Implementation of a site alteration bylaw will only empower neighbours who want to harass other neighbours at no cost to themselves by using the town's bylaw staff and resources. If this bylaw is indeed implemented, any current projects must be exempted and allowed to be completed with ample time given, taking into consideration the rainy winter conditions and half-load haulage laws in effect during certain seasons, which may limit or extend the ability to properly complete the project. I will now read the February 29th, 2012 letter that I have referred to. This was addressed to all councillors individually without a response. We request you to provide to us the following information, please. Number 1, how many so-called berms are existing or are under any stage of construction within your ward? 2, the location of each and every so-called berm, including street name and number. 3, the size and composition of each and every so-called berm within your ward, the number of complaints received either by the town of Pelham or you personally from residents within your ward concerning each and every so-called berm within your ward. 5, if you have received complaints, we inquire as to the history of each complaint, as far as the nature of the complaint and what actions were taken by the town of Pelham or you regarding each complaint. 6, if complaints containing allegations about any so-called berm within your ward are received by you or the town of Pelham, are such allegations proven prior to any actions by the town of Pelham? 7, have you personally, as councillor, or has the town of Pelham consulted with any of the following agencies regarding any so-called berms within your ward? I listed Ministry of Environment, Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, and Niagara Escarpment Control. 8, has the town of Pelham ever limited access to or applied any road restrictions in connection with the construction of any and all so-called berms within your ward? Thank you in advance for your time to address this inquiry for us. Sincerely, Larry and Jane Stogren. My September 30th letter was in response to Council's request for public comment concerning the creation of draft site alteration bylaw. Since your posted deadline for receipt of comments was October 1st, 2012, my letter was received prior to your deadline. This summary report includes comments on page 53 through 61, all of which were made after the deadline, with the latest dated October the 13th. Pages 66 and 67 of this report included a friendly email forwarded to Mayor Dave from Tove Bowman that did not contain any comment from this party about the proposed bylaw. In my view, this email was inappropriate inclusion to the summary report. It was addressed to members of the Niagara Landowners Association, not Mayor Dave. And furthermore, again, did not contain any view about creation of a site alteration bylaw by the author, and no address was provided. I do believe the email was included to further point blame for creation of a site alteration bylaw clearly at our lawful construction project. Mayor Dave's personal blog on the internet includes a photo of my farm when discussing the need for a site alteration bylaw. Perhaps the photo should have been of the property at 55016 Road that has multiple berms of extreme length and height, containing thousands of loads of material in comparison to our farm. Pages 110 through 113 of the summary report reflect the fact that lawful construction at 55016 Road has been allowed to go on unfettered since around 2005 without being targeted as need for a bylaw. Since this incomplete site alteration summary report was distributed to press and public, I feel it must be recalled. The report should be re-released to include my previous excluded letter and all letters and comments received by the town since the discussion first began on this subject. I feel that a public meeting, as promised, and a public vote should take place before this bylaw is moved forward. Thank you for the chance to address council.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I wonder if members of council have any questions for you at this time? None?
Thank you.
I wonder if, just the question of why this wasn't included, and so I'm going to turn to staff to see if we have an explanation for that. Madam Clerk, I'm going to turn to you for that. Can you assist us, please?
Yes, the letter was addressed to Mayor Augustine, councillors, CAO, and did not come through the office of the clerk, so it wasn't included or forwarded to the Director of Planning. I did explain that to the presenter last week and apologized for any oversight there. So Mr. Larmer is aware of the letter now.
Okay, thank you. And I think, as you indicated with your February letter, and you
Yes.
did it on the September 30th letter, you gave it to each member of council individually.
Yes.
And so I think there was a confusion point there. Each member has seen it, has read it, and reviewed it, but it didn't form part of the public record, which is the reason that you wanted to make the presentation today. So as we've certainly received it this evening, so it is part of the public record, and as we move forward, I would assume that it would continue to form part of the public record in discussion on the matter.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you very much for your presentation. Appreciate that. I have a motion which has been moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak, that the information received in the delegation by Jean Stogren regarding site alteration be received for information. And this will be the formal way in which we'll receive it. I'm going to call the question on that. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. That motion is carried. Thank you again for your presentation. And as you know, we will be discussing the matter at our priorities and policies meeting, which is immediately following council. Now to another presentation. This is a report of Regional Councillor Brian Beatty. There he is. He switched from one side of the room to the other. Thank you for joining us this evening, Councillor Beatty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and members of council and staff. Yeah, tonight 2 reports. The first one I will not go through in detail. It's from the Regional Council meeting of October 25th. Made an error in terms of discussion with the mayor. I knew that that was going to be the site alteration bylaw night. When he said it was that committee, I assumed that's all there was. And there's been a change in the communication about council meetings that's gone electronic that I didn't notice. So I'd like you to just look at the bottom couple of items on integrated community planning. One is the approval of the report on the Gateway Marketing Plan, and requested staff to prepare a report on the formation of a Team Niagara action team to support implementation. This is probably one of the most dynamic possible ways forward for the improvement of employment opportunities in Southern Niagara. In terms of that, we formed a CIP process and put together some fairly major incentive packages to attract new business here, and hopefully will also allow current business to maintain their ability to employ Niagarans. So this is a very significant start. It's going into the action phase, and significant marketing around that around the world to try and attract investors to Niagara. It actually has begun by the fact of the Chinese firm taking over the former Hayes Dana plant in Thorold South, and putting up wind towers. They've already received a very significant multi-million-dollar contract, and they're looking at bringing up to 10 other smaller companies onto that property and developing a form of docking facility with the canal. That's the thing that attracted the canal, as well as the highway infrastructure and the rail infrastructure. And it's a case where I think the good things will come in the future from this, and we're looking forward to roll this out within the next few months. The last item in ICP is requesting staff to prepare a report on the cost and operational considerations for adding referendum questions on the ballots in the 2014 election. I'm not certain what the councillor who asked for this had in mind, but we may have such things as, do you support the direct election of a regional chair? That could be a ballot question, as it has been in other regions in the past. Another one that's being floated about is the concept of dual role, that a local councillor will serve as a local councillor as well as a regional councillor. That may or may not be a ballot question. So more information on that. First item in public health, only because of its importance and its imminent importance to Niagarans who are in poverty. We received a presentation on a proposal for a housing stability plan, establishing a temporary emergency contingency plan to mitigate the impact of the province's decision to terminate the community startup and maintenance benefits. This is going to affect people very, very dramatically starting January 1st, because significant dollars that used to be there to, say, provide for the person on last month's rent so they can get into housing, or let's say that they couldn't pay their utility bill, those funds have been drastically cut by more than 50%, and we've taken some actions here, diverting some funds from basically the funds that we put aside for poverty in terms of trying to make that program work for as best it can. And the last one is simply a typo. The second and last item in Public Works received report, it should be 2012. The finger jumped twice on the number 1 there. The report for the most recent council meeting is before you. At Corporate Services, we had a report with respect to a new proposed data center for information technology. That's the infrastructure and operations area. That was referred back to staff for further information. Received a report respecting a proposed acquisition of land for provincial offences POA court facilities. Mr. Mayor, I meant to go back in material and had some computer glitches today. Could you comment on what that was? Was it a specific facility or just the concept of a current facility?
The POA?
Yes.
It was it actually went back to staff, and council and the councillor will recall that regional council made a motion to say that it should be in 2 locations, one in Welland and one in St. Catharines. It was just information about that. It didn't really, I'll say, advance the yardstick very far.
It wasn't site-specific then?
No, it was not site-specific. And committee asked for, and then council ultimately approved, additional information looking at the possibility of locating that in other kind of facilities that are about to be built or not. So
okay, thanks for that.
And I think also at leasing. the report had an understanding that it might be a new build as opposed to a lease. And committee said, why wouldn't you lease space if possible? So,
Fine, thank you for that. Third item there was requested staff to report back to council on the feasibility of a region-wide bylaw on ATVs and motorcycle use on the Greater Niagara Circle Route and East Side Trail. The first thing we have to do is get harmonized bylaws amongst the 5 communities in the Greater Niagara Circle Route. It's becoming a very large problem, and people who are in the development opposite Woodlawn, opposite the big plaza there, are really being annoyed by the amount of traffic that's happening. There's a lot of physical damage happening as well, mainly through ATVs. So we're looking at getting that done on a region-wide basis. Integrated Community Planning Committee received a presentation requesting that consideration be given to reuniting Dunnville with the Niagara Federal Electoral Districts. Apparently they were at one point in time. And the 2 reps there, one is, I believe, a deputy mayor, very strongly wanted to see that realignment. They thought that Dunnville was better served when they were part of Niagara on the federal electoral districts. Recommended the chair be authorized to sign a letter addressing the removal of the Hooker, that's the Hyde Park Superfund site, from the United States Environmental Protection Agency's National Priority List. That's a major concern because they still have leachate draining into the Niagara River, and leachate shows very high contamination, so we're quite concerned that they've delisted that in terms of the impact it will have on our Canadian waters. Recommended for approval the 2013 meeting schedules for Regional Council itself, the Budget Review Committee of the Whole, Council Business Planning Committee of the Whole, as well as their standing committees. There was a motion put forward to change the committee name and include economic development. It was amended motion. It was lost in a recorded vote. There's been an ongoing discussion that economic development needs to have a high profile. Our feeling is that if it's part of the integrated planning, planning sometimes is against development in terms of the regulations, the regulatory process. And the decision rate at the moment is that basically economic development is reporting through the CAO's office. And it's a very strong need to have that message that this is different than the way it used to be when we had the at-length committee in terms of the Economic Development Corporation itself. Received a report on the Regional Policy Plan Amendment 6, 2012 to establish policies to support the Welland Canal cultural heritage landscape. And finally, a report on the denial of the expansion of the Nelson Aggregate Quarry in Halton Region. That's, so as you know, I serve on the Escarpment Commission, and that was seen to be a very significant victory. And basically, the factor was the preservation of an endangered species, the Jefferson salamander. And it's a case where I think it's precedent setting. It's probably going to be subject to an appeal, judicial review, but it certainly is got a lot of notice. A very lengthy, very costly process to go through in that kind of an attempt to get a quarry expansion. And it could possibly have some impact in terms of, as you are aware, this community is a site to quarry quarries and possible quarry expansion in the future. So there is somewhat of a precedent to look at here. Public Health and Social Services Committee received and approved with amendments a report calling for a regional action for smoke-free outdoor public places, with an understanding that continued discussions will take place with the public as well as the local municipalities. My understanding is I think that there are 4 local municipalities at this point in time have asked for that bylaw to be put in place, and they're looking at having a regional implication rather than simply the separate municipalities. Received a report on the screening liaison nurse in the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program, with the government creating 1 full-time equivalent position. And an update on the Niagara Prosperity Initiative. This is probably, in my opinion, one of the best programs that we've implemented. You can't solve all of poverty, but by using the mapping process for mapping all neighborhoods in Niagara and focusing on those in greatest needs, we put together sums of money basically and ask for applications for programs. It's very well received by the social sector, and we've seen marked improvement in terms of the areas where this investment has taken place. I received a report announcing the addition of 2.6 new full-time equivalent positions for the seniors community programs from the LIN. This is part of the attempt to keep seniors in their homes for a longer period of time rather than residential care. Approved a resolution from the Social Assistance Reform Network of Niagara, SARN, regarding the provincial termination of the Community Startup and Maintenance Benefit Program. And lastly, Public Works Committee approved a report for a 600-millimeter diameter water main on Edgedale Road and Eastchester Avenue in St. Catharines in excess of $11 million. Recommend an agreement for sanitary infrastructure works in a Rosedale subdivision in Port Colborne, and approved recommendations for the Waste Management Planning Steering Committee supporting the Special Events Recycling Project, which has been beneficial to many communities, and approved recommendations from the Transportation Strategy Steering Committee, including the development of policies, practices, and plans for safe and convenient pedestrian conditions that would be uncertain brought to the attention of our PATC, Active Transportation Committee here in Pelham. Received a report on the terms of reference for an environmental assessment for the Humberston landfill planned expansion. Received a status report on the pavement and bridge conditions in Niagara. and received a letter from the City of Welland requesting that the region review the bicycle master plan to consider active transportation and the creation of complete streets within municipalities. That bicycle master plan was originated in 2003, I believe, 2002-3, with a desire to have a 5-year update. Like many of our official plans, that hasn't happened. And I asked a question at committee in terms of that to go forward. They may not do a comprehensive plan, but in areas, for example, Woodlawn Road and the Niagara College expansion and all of the subdivisions and so on, the 406 expansion, there needs to be a new look. I think our Haste Road construction here and the new pending development of our East Found Hill area, again, there's need to relook at that, and hopefully that will take place. And on that regard, we are pressing forward with attempting to get some reconsideration or activation of the funding for the Thorold Found Hill Spur in terms of the connection to the Niagara Circle Route. My report, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Beatty, for your very comprehensive report. Nice to see you back here this evening at Council. And I wonder if members of Council have any questions for you. Councillor Durley.
Just one through you, Mr. Mayor. The November standing committees of 6th and 7th of 2012, under integrated community planning, the delegation from Dunnville, that was just received for information, or is there going to be some action taken?
Received for information, and it's a case where the staff will report back in terms of that.
Okay.
And they had a very comprehensive package that they presented, a PowerPoint package, very detailed explanation in terms of why it made economic sense and political sense to do that. And I gather they're doing the circuit, Councillor Durley, in terms
Okay,
of...
I'm suggesting that since Pelham is included with Stony Creek, that it makes more sense for the connection to be this way as well. So if in fact their staff is doing any kind of a concern, if they can give some consideration to Pelham, because in fact, like I say, for us to be dealing with things that are happening in Stony Creek, more so, we're certainly more involved with people in the Niagara region, Welland, and so on, as our past delegations have said, you know, with the connection to Welland with the museum and so on. So I'm looking at if there is any action that can be taken, or any pressure, or any consideration by those that are making the decisions to realign the federal boundaries. To me, it makes sense to
I'll follow through back at committee to see what the staff are doing with their plan.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Just to that, there was a request for presentations, and I believe the Dunnville group made a presentation, as did some others across the region, about the gerrymandering that the electoral group is proposing for Ontario. That was on October 30th in Niagara Falls. The proposal that the group put forward was that actually that Niagara West piece come back into Niagara, and that Niagara just have 4 electoral districts at the federal level, and then that may well be mirrored at the provincial level. This Dunnville proposal, they did present to the federal body that's overseeing it. They were essentially, as a result of including them, it would move Fort Erie into Niagara Falls and Niagara on the Lake with St. Catharines, and then it would just change things sort of with the St. Catharines. So the riding that's being proposed by the electoral group wouldn't really change for Pelham. It would include a different part of St. Catharines, but it would include Thorold, Pelham, West Lincoln, Lincoln, Grimsby. So it wouldn't, it would be with the same group, but the Stony Creek would be into the Hamilton area. So I have a copy of it. I'll provide that. Make sure that we provide that to all members of council. You can see what is there and what they proposed.
Thank you.
Okay. Just going to circle that here. Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Powell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, a quick question through you to Councillor Beatty. The Humberstone landfill expansion, just out of curiosity, is that the Elm Street site?
Which?
Is that the Elm Street site?
No.
It's not?
No, it's the one where by the former Toyota dealership down that street,
Okay.
just as you're going off Highway 58.
And maybe the word expansion, if I might, maybe the word expansion isn't the right word. It doesn't mean an expansion of landmass. It's actually what they're looking for is doing an environmental assessment of what's called a lift. So add additional height to that. And there was a series of public meetings back, I guess, in October, September on that matter, just to see if it's a possibility, because I guess they anticipate that site will be, filled in 5 to 7 years, so they want to
Okay.
make it available for another sort of 20 after that.
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Councillor Beatty? Thank you very much, Councillor Beatty, for your report. We appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you on Thursday. The Region, thank you very much. The next item of business are adoption of minutes. We have two packages of minutes here.
I put it all on one resolution. If I could just explain that this one is.
Go ahead, Madam Clerk, why don't you?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the minutes of November 2nd were not on the call to order system, which is why it's listed as two items on your agenda, but the resolution proposes approval of all three. In the future, that won't happen because all minutes going forward are now on call to order.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So it's been moved by Councillor Papp, second by Councillor Ribbiak, that the council reports C28, C29, C30 being the minutes of the special meeting of November 2nd, November 5th, and November 6th, 2012 be approved as circulated. Are there any errors or omissions in those minutes? Madam Clerk, I noticed one, and it's in relation to the special budget meeting that we had. The proposed cost estimate of, and there was talking about the skateboard park. It was a cost estimate of $150,000 instead of $50,000. So,
I'll make that change.
and it was really under the Aviva grant. It was 100 to 150. So thank you for making that. Anything else? There being none, I call the question on as amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. The next item is consent agenda items to be considered in block. Are there any items that members would like to lift for separate consideration? Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under 12.2, I'd like to propose that we divide this particular item so that we could in fact lift CS 2012-11/05-10-19.
Which is?
Specifically dealing with the amendment and the subsequent resolution that dealt with the Castellano developments.
Okay. Can we lift that for separate, or do we need a?
That can be through a request. A motion to divide can be through a request.
Okay, so do we need to lift the entire Cal minutes? Is that?
No, you can just,
We can just lift that item.
The item that I.
Okay,
was
so
dividing.
we'll deem that item as opposed to divide, just pull it out and deal with it separately.
Okay,
Okay, lift it for separate consideration, so that'll be under 13.
okay.
Okay,
And
any others?
linked to that, Mr. Mayor, is 12.3.1 is the correspondence that was received from Castellano Developments as well.
Okay. And 12.3.2?
Yes, we could probably deal with that at the
Okay,
same
so
time.
let's lift those items as well and deal with them all under item 13. Thank you, Counselor. Others? You catch that? So A and B. Okay. Thank you so much. It has been moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak, that the following consent agenda items be received and approved. 12.1 and 12.2, the minutes of the Committee of the Whole of 03 of November 5th, 2012, and the recommendation sheet listed and the recommendations listed on the recommendation sheet, save and except for the recommendation regarding Castellano, which is 2012 1105 1019 recommendation, and information items received to November 14th, 2012, items of correspondence C and D, which is the notice of study completion of the class environmental assessment, and D, the Regional Niagara resolution regarding contraband tobacco. Any comments or questions on any of those items under the consent agenda? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. And now to those three items, Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As council is aware, the recommendation that was made by Cal originally was amended to include a clause which directed staff to amend the red line such that lots 81 through 87 would become 4 lots as opposed to 7, and that the lot lines would mirror those lots that were adjacent to Lookout. And the intent of that amendment was to try and assuage some of the concerns that were put forward by the residents who had bought those large lots and had built executive-style homes along that frontage. Subsequent to that, we received some information from Castellano Developments, which pointed out that the developer in Phase 1 was having significant difficulties in selling the 100-foot lots, and that the current developer had some concerns with respect to going forward on that basis. So I've asked that this be brought back to the table for further discussion and perhaps give some consideration to removing that amendment and going forward with the original proposal, following some discussion around perhaps entrenching within the zoning bylaw that would be applicable to that area, some mention of size, a minimum square footage, so that as opposed to changing the lot size, we look at the size of the home that's being footprinted. The developer, when he put his case forward, in fact indicated that footprints of the homes that would be put into those lots could be and mirror the size of the homes that are currently upon Lookout Street. So I wanted council to perhaps give some consideration to that approach as opposed to trying to alter the red line plan that was put forward by Castellano, that we look to perhaps entrenching within the zoning bylaw some minimum size that would reflect the size of those homes that are along Lookout.
So Counselor, we need a motion. So what I'm hearing you say is that you want to at least put on the
I'll make
the original motion from the report.
Either that way, Mr. Mayor, or that we would remove the amendment that was attached to that.
Madam Clerk, which would be the better procedural way to deal with that?
The resolution presented to members of council would have been the recommendation coming out of COW, which was as it was amended. So the procedure would be then to amend that recommendation by removing the last paragraph.
Okay, so you make that.
So move.
You make that motion. Thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Durley. Thank you very much. Further discussion to that motion? Councillor Rivyak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess we all received the correspondence from Castellano, and I think we all read it with a great deal of interest. And I think we looked at it through the lens of the issues that we understood before us with regard to why we made the motion last time as well. I did note that in the material that Castellano sent, the correspondence that they sent, there's no attempt at all to change to any extent the number of lots behind those 7, and I guess that's the issue. We went from 7, they recommend 7, we went to 4, and I guess the motion is to remove that and go back to 7. Within the rationale in the correspondence was a view that it was difficult to sell lots in excess of 70 feet in width. But I note that the 7 lots that they're proposing aren't 70 feet either, they're 60. And so I would think that there's some common ground perhaps to be met between 4 and 7 that Castellano might have, the developer might have proposed, that might have gone some way to dealing with the issues that we were faced with. And I'm wondering whether we shouldn't turn our minds a little bit to that. 7 is too many. 4, they're suggesting, is too few because the size of the lots would be too large. It seems to me that there's the opportunity to come up with another number of lots that may meet their needs and and help offset this issue a little bit. I think there's some common ground in the middle there, and I think maybe we should try to explore some of that. Those are
Okay,
my
thank you,
comments, Mr.
Councillor.
Mayor.
Others? Councillor Papp?
I tend to agree, Councillor Bribbiak, that I am still opposed to moving it back to 4 lots, but if there's a common ground, then the developer is willing to examine it to find that particular number that satisfies, I guess, not only the interests of the 4 people located on Lookout, but more importantly, that it continues with sort of the idea that Councillor Kersey was going, that the size of the buildings that would be constructed would, I guess, warrant or reflect values in the design and what's being incorporated. I suggest we send it back. I'm not sure how, but work through that if that's at all possible. I think there's a lot of merit to what was noted in the report or the letter that came from, and I think there's some sort of a compromise level somewhere in there, if there is.
Okay, thank
Because I
you.
don't want to be in a situation where we're, back and forth. I mean, I think we've been through this before in some other situations in past experience, and we have been able to resolve them to satisfactorily to the neighbors and to the areas. And I can think of a couple over the years where that's exactly, Mr. Mayor, you and I, or Councilor Durley, were involved, where that actually happened.
Okay,
Okay, thanks.
thank you. Mr. Lorimer, it's been suggested by a couple of councillors now that something could be done in terms of the zoning and the size of build on that property. Can you comment, when's the time to do that? Is that sort of standard practice? Can you just give us some comments to continue the discussion on that, please?
It is possible to establish a minimum size or minimum dwelling unit area, and we can do that through the zoning bylaw amendment. It is typical for builders to do that themselves when they're entering agreement of purchase and sale contracts with prospective purchasers. We have done it on occasion in zoning bylaws. So if council is interested in going down that road, then we could you could provide direction to the recommendation that is before you tonight. If you're considering changing the number of lots, then you would have to have a conversation with the developer, and you would essentially have to defer the recommendation that's before you tonight. The other option is the developer or his representative, I believe, is here this evening, and you could have a conversation with him if council deemed that appropriate.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Others to that? I want to comment before, and council can think about an approach. But in terms of these lots, I think it was interesting to see in the item of correspondence from Mr. Bassiano that actually what we proposed in committee was larger lots than was actually approved in draft approval. I have the picture right here. There was essentially 5 lots to those 4 lots in draft approval, and we made 4. So those lots are actually bigger than was approved in draft approval. So it was an interesting to look at that, and I appreciate Mr. Bassiano giving that to us in the correspondence. In terms of having the discussion, I'm not sure that we should have that discussion this evening here. Really, the option is I would suggest to council to either approve it now or defer it pending, I'll call it negotiations, discussions between staff and the developer, to see if some sort of compromise can be achieved. Mr. Clark, Councillor Clark?
Yeah, I agree with you, Mr. Mayor, that let's keep the lines of communication open. 2 more weeks I don't think is really going to affect either party, and let's invite them in and talk about it.
Okay. So, a motion
A
to?
motion to instruct staff to start negotiations to settle the sizes of the lots.
Okay, so,
Red line lots?
so a motion to refer this to staff?
Yes.
To have that discussion with the developer about the size of those lots and report back to council at our next meeting on December 3rd? Okay,
Yeah.
so,
Point of order,
Yep.
Mr. Mayor. We do have a motion on the floor that is an amendment. Does that need to be dealt with and taken off the table before we
Good
go
question.
with another motion?
yeah. I think it's a motion to refer.
Would have priority over.
Okay, that's good. As long as we're in order. That's good.
Okay, thank you. So, Council, you'll make that motion. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Papp? Do you have that motion? I'm going to call, I don't know, we don't have debate on referral motions, do we?
On referral, you would.
In terms of other instructions?
Yeah, other
Are
instructions.
there any other instructions to give to that? Perhaps you can read it back to us.
There is a motion on the floor made by Councillors Clark and Papp to refer the matter back to staff to have further discussions with the developer and report back to council on December 3rd regarding the number of lots.
Okay. Councillor Kersey?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to broaden that referral and add to it that would also be a discussion regarding the alternative that I put forward with respect to the zoning and
Okay.
encasing the footprint in it.
So zoning and lots.
Yep.
Okay.
That's right.
Clarification, Mr. Chair.
Councillor?
Zoning as far as size of building on the property,
That's correct.
that's the question. Okay.
Thank you. Size of lot.
Okay. That's good.
Size of structure on the building. Okay, we're ready for that. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. That referral is carried, and we look forward to those results coming back to us on December 3rd. There are two items of correspondence. They haven't been discussed yet. So can we receive those items? Councillor Kirsty, will you move receipt of those items? And Councillor Papp? One of the items, Kirsty and Papp. One of the items is from Lookout Point Golf Club. And I think perhaps when staff discuss this with the developer, perhaps they can also discuss the word point. The letter from Mr. Bassiano clearly states residences at Lookout Point, formerly Village of Chestnut Ridge Phase 2, and it's a sticking point, pun intended, for the golf club, and perhaps it's something that staff can discuss as well to see if perhaps that could be removed, and the residence at Lookout can be used instead of Lookout Point, which is, I think, what the correspondence is. So we'll, if it's okay with Councillor Clark.
Just a question, and again, I'm not a lawyer.
On
but
that topic, yeah.
It is on that topic, yeah. I'm not a lawyer, but is that something that we even want to be a part of, or is that something they should sort out themselves?
Well, I think, yes, Mr. Lorimer, are you indicating you'd like to be part of that? You want to answer to that?
I've already discussed the matter with Lookout Point, and they've indicated that they have talked to Mountain View already.
Okay. Well, we'll look forward to that coming back to us. I think I'm going to say, to me personally, we're approving a subdivision agreement that has the word Lookout Point in it. We have a letter on file now to take the word point out, so, it's something that the parties will have to work at, and I think perhaps when staff come forward with the referral at our next meeting, that could be cleared up. Okay? Councilor Clark?
Let's go one further with it. Again, I'm just not sure if that's really, part of what we should be involved in. I realize that we want to make sure we have the correct names registered, but let them sort it out and bring it back to us. This is the name that we want. This is the name that's ours. That's just my perspective on it.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Kersey?
I agree with Councillor Clark. I think we're getting into the realm of copyright and infringement of proprietary properties and all of this sort of stuff. I think the two parties need to iron that out among themselves, and if they have a legal battle, so be it.
All right, thank you. Others? Going to call the question on the motion to receive the items of correspondence. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. The next item, reports from members of council. If I can find my sheet of paper here. I have two reports. I had the pleasure of attending the Diamond Jubilee Awards that our Member of Parliament, Dean Allison, put together on Tuesday, November 13th. It was a wonderful evening. It was held at the Casablanca Inn in Grimsby, and it was a time where Mr. Allison honored 28 individuals from across the Niagara West Glanbrook riding with Diamond Jubilee Awards, commemorating the Diamond Jubilee of the Queen. I wanted to inform council that there were 4 members from Pelham that received this honor. And they were Angela Carter, whom council knows very well from her work on our strategic plan. She didn't receive it for that. It was for her work with the United Way, with Port Cares, and really volunteering in the community very dramatically since I think it was stated that evening 13 when she first volunteered at the hospital. So certainly well deserved to Angela Carter. Congratulations to her. Another is well known around this council table as well, and that's B. Clark. She is the chair of our Pelham Active Transportation Committee, and the founding chair of that committee. It convinced council to be involved in a walkable community initiative, and was very, very strong supporter with Summerfest, and indeed ensuring, along with the committee members, that Summerfest has an active component to it, and also we very often get correspondence from B on active lifestyles, active events and things, and how to incorporate that more fuller in our work here. So congratulations to B. The next was to Erica Church. She is the lead on a project called Matthew 25. This is from the Christian Bible. What you do to the least of my brothers, you did to me. Matthew 25, and essentially it's a charity that is headquartered in Welland, but Miss Church is a resident of Pelham, that collects items for those less fortunate and delivers them. It's sort of a almost like the Warehouse of Hope is in Niagara-on-the-Lake, sort of for this area. So very excellent work, and very well grounded in the community. And the final was to Leo Giovinazzo. He is the outgoing captain of the Branch 613 Army Cadets. It was under Leo's leadership that the cadets received 3 Lord Strathcona Awards and 1 Maddox Award. Those are for the best scouting contingents in southwestern Ontario and in Ontario. And he led the cadets for a number of years, and got them very, very involved in the community, involved in many of our Pelham events. So congratulations to Leo as well, and to all of the recipients of those awards. And it was a wonderful evening that was hosted by Mr. Allison. Congratulations. My next report is regarding a meeting that the CAO and I had with Dr. Kevin Smith. That was on November 13th as well. It was at his office in Hamilton. We included representatives of the development group in the East Fawn Hills lands, I should say the commercial developer in the East Fawn Hill lands, Mr. Allen. We informed Dr. Smith. He, of course, is the supervisor for the NHS. We informed him about council's motion regarding the urgent care center and the idea of wanting that in our community. We also presented Dr. Smith with some maps of where Pelham is in Niagara, not where it is, but really the drive times, using some data. How long does it take to get to that area within Niagara? And it was very interesting to see that within 20 minutes, 77% of the population of Niagara lives. And as you go 25, 30, it's essentially 100%. So it's very well situated for that kind of medical facility, medical cluster. He was very interested in the plans, wanted to continue the discussion with us and with the developer on those plans. And really, we also, the CAO also updated Dr. Smith on on the work that he's been doing, and council will hear about in the future with the developer and how that works with our community. So it was a very, very good meeting, and it's really, opened the door for future discussions to the matter. And he indicated that he would be, he suggested that we continue to meet with the Minister of Health, meet with the chair of the Local Health Integration Network, and we'll continue to follow up on that. And I'll keep council informed of that. So those are my reports, and we had some additions as well to the agenda. I think the first was Councillor Durley with a community update. Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Along the lines of celebrating community and successes, the Grey Cup is coming up on Sunday, and a very prolific athlete who actually grew up in Pelham is playing on the line for the Toronto Argonauts. Chris Van Zale is in line to receive, if they're fortunate enough to win, a Grey Cup ring. So I think we should give acknowledgement to Chris for his excellent successes in the football field, in the Canadian Football League, and wish him all the best come Sunday night or Sunday afternoon at the Grey Cup. Just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. We should be very proud to have Chris on the front line of the Toronto Argonauts. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Councillor. Thank you for informing us and the entire community about that, and we wish Chris all the best. Councillor Papp, thank you, Councillor Durley. Councillor Papp, you had a couple of reports.
Very quickly, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I also attended a Diamond Jubilee Awards session on November 15th, and I was very honored to be the MC on behalf of our former colleague, Malcolm Allen, member with the Welland Riding. There were 30 recipients, and what I want to note, in particular for all the residents here in Pelham, that our own, very own Councillor John Durley, his mother was honored with a Diamond Jubilee Award, and truly deserving, John, and congratulations. It was quite an honor to be there to present her that award. So congratulations, John, to you and the family, and especially your mother.
Thank you.
Tremendous work. 50 years of work and volunteer. Secondly, Welland Pelham Chamber, I just want to note that Councillor Beatty also made note of it, that we had a presentation from Councillor Bruce Timms with respect of a proposed governance structure consideration, and I know that'll be coming back, and I know that's something that we want to pursue and have a dialogue over what he's proposing in several other areas, but I don't need to elaborate, but he brought it to the chamber, and they're looking, and we're seeking to have that dialogue with us here at Members of Council, and thanks to you, Mr. Mayor, and Councillor Beatty to take that further. And finally, November 27th, 8:30 a.m., it's the Mayor's Breakfast. We'll be all looking forward to talking to you and seeing when you present your report to us at the Lazy Loon at 8:30 a.m. next week. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We look to be talking about all the wonderful things that are going on in our community, and we encourage all to attend. Thank you very much, councillors. There's no staff reports requiring action. No unfinished business, no new business, so now we're moving to bylaws. And it has been moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak, that leave now be given to introduce the following bylaw and dispense with the reading of the bylaw, being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the actions of council at its meeting held on the 19th day of November 2012. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. It's been moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak, that the following bylaw have been considered first time, be numbered as follows. Bylaw 3,315 be now considered a second and third time and passed. And the mayor and clerk do sign and seal the same. Any rule of council to the contrary notwithstanding. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. It's been moved by Councillor Ribbiak, second by Councillor Papp. This regular meeting of council be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for Monday, December 3rd, 2012, unless sooner called by the mayor. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. This meeting is adjourned. We'll break for 5 minutes and then reconvene at P&P committee. Thank you. I go through the same thing every day.